Now that we are about 24 hours removed from the NHL trade deadline and all the hype has kind of died down and everyone really got a chance to really think about and go in depth on all of these trades, I wanted to give you guys 5 teams who I think were huge winners yesterday at the NHL trade deadline. So with that being said, let's get right into the video. Starting off with the obvious one, that is the Nashville Predators. Now, Nashville had an amazing day yesterday. They really bolstered that forward group, and that was kind of their only weakness. They didn't have as much star power up front and as much firepower as some of the other teams in the Western Conference do. Obviously, they had the amazing D and the great goaltending, but that forward group was their only somewhat weakness. I wouldn't even call it a weakness, but maybe just a little flaw in their team, but they really bolstered that, and their top 6 is probably going to be one of the best in the entire Western Conference after these 2 deals were made. They acquired Mikael Granlund first, straight up 1-for-1 for Kevin Fiala, and I honestly thought this was a steal, and a lot of people agree with me. Kevin Fiala is 4 years younger, he's only 22, but I don't think he has the upside that Granlund does. Granlund's not old by any means, he's only 26, he's still not even really in his prime, and he's on his way to his 3rd straight 60-point season, so I think he's going to be a great addition to the Nashville Predators team. He can play center and he can play the wing. He's a guy who's just like a Swiss Army knife out there. He can really do a lot of things. And then next, they acquired Wayne Simmonds in exchange for Ryan Hartman and a conditional 4th round pick. The condition on the draft pick, I believe, is if Nashville wins 1 playoff round, then Philadelphia does get that 4th round pick, which is most likely going to happen. So pretty much Ryan Hartman and a 4th for Wayne Simmonds, who's going to bring some more goal scoring and a physical aspect to the Nashville Predators team that they kind of been looking for. So I love the deals that the Nashville Predators made, and I really think they solidified themselves as a legit contender. They were before these trades, but now I think they're one of the favorites to win the Stanley Cup, and I think they're going to be a very, very tough team to put out in the playoffs. And I think Nashville fans should be really pumped of what the trades looked like for the Nashville Predators yesterday. Next up is the New York Rangers. Now, some people might not agree with this one because, yes, they did get worse for this season and probably for next season, but this is a rebuilding team, and I think them getting worse is a really good thing, and they accumulated a lot of assets towards the rebuild, and I just think they had a really good day yesterday. First, they acquired Brendan Lemieux, and then I think some draft picks for Kevin Hayes, obviously. Brendan Lemieux is a guy who I think could play in the NHL right now, especially for this New York team. He's still young, and maybe a fresh start with a new team really could help him break out. They obviously acquired Julius Bergman, a 1st round pick in 2019, a conditional pick in 2020, and then the 2 conditional 2nd and 3rds. That was in the Matt Zuccarello trade, and the conditions on them are actually pretty nice if they are to happen for the Rangers. That conditional 3rd becomes a 1st, I believe, if the Dallas Stars make it to the conference finals, and then the conditional 2nd becomes a 1st if Zuccarello does resign, or it could be flipped around the opposite. I'm not quite sure, but potentially 2 1st round picks for Matt Zuccarello. That is some great value. And then they got a 4th round pick, a 7th round pick, and then I think Julius Bergman was in that trade for Adam McQuaid. So I really do like the moves that the New York Rangers made. They got a lot of draft picks. They got young guys in Bergman and Lemieux. Lemieux especially because I think he can step into the lineup and be a positive young player for them this season. So I think they made a huge step in the right direction in terms of their rebuild. And yes, you are going to miss guys like Hayes and Zuccarello. Maybe not so much McQuaid, but some people will miss him too. But man, I really do like the day that the Rangers had, and I think the New York Rangers fans in the future are going to look back on this and be pumped with the return that they got for their 3 players. Next up is the Columbus Blue Jackets. Now, yes, they did give up a lot of draft picks. I believe they only have 2 or 3 draft picks in this up-and-coming draft, but when your 2-star players like Bobrovsky and Panarin are up-and-coming unrestricted free agents and you don't really know if they have any intent of re-signing, why not go all in if you can't make a trade for those guys? And that is exactly what Jarmo Kekalainen did with this Columbus Blue Jackets team, and I respect him big time for that. I think Blue Jackets fans should be really pumped with the look of this team heading into the postseason. They have a legitimate shot, in my opinion, at being a team that can make it to the conference finals. So they acquired Matt Duchene, Ryan Dzingel, a 7th round pick in 2019, Keith Kincaid, and Adam McQuaid, and they traded away Vitaly Abramov, Jonathan Davidson, a 1st round pick in 2019, a conditional 1st in 2020, Anthony Duclair, a 2nd in 2020, a 2nd in 2021, a 5th in 2022, a 4th in 2019, and a 7th in 2019, and then Julius Bergman. So obviously that's a lot of draft picks, but when you look at what they acquired, this team is going to be deadly. Ryan Dzingel can probably play 3rd line or 2nd line minutes. I'm not quite sure what the lines are going to look like, but Matt Duchene, it's already known that he's a really good fit. He scored a goal already for the Columbus Blue Jackets. He looks like he's just having a great time, and I'm happy that Ryan Dzingel got to go to a place where he's with Matt Duchene, because obviously they played together back in Ottawa, and I think those two guys are really ecstatic about the situation. And then getting Keith Kincaid as a backup, obviously he's more experienced than Korpisalo. I think he's probably more consistent as well, and a backup goaltender is always something nice to have, you know, just as an insurance policy. And then Adam McQuaid gonna bring a lot more depth to that decor. So I really like the look of this Columbus Blue Jackets team. I think they made a lot of smart trades in terms of a team that's going all in, and this is a dark horse team in my opinion to potentially make it out of the Eastern Conference. I'm going to be watching them closely, especially come playoff time, but I think Blue Jackets fans should be pumped with all the new players that they acquired. Next up is the team that got the biggest fish on the market, and that is the Vegas Golden Knights acquiring Mark Stone. They only made one trade, but when you acquire a player of his caliber, I just think that makes you a winner automatically, especially when you didn't have to give up a ridiculous package to get him. So Vegas acquired Mark Stone and Tobias Lindberg in exchange for Eric Brandstrom, Oscar Lindberg, and a second-round pick in 2020. Now, Brandstrom, obviously, that is a big piece to give up. He's an A-plus prospect. I think he's the real deal, and he's going to be an amazing player. But getting Mark Stone, I think, is going to be huge for this team. He's going to bring a lot more consistency and a lot more firepower to an offensive group who has been really underachieving this year, obviously, after they did overachieve in a big way last year and kind of put a lot of pressure on themselves to replicate that. But they're still a good team, just players not really having the individual success that they had last season. I think Mark Stone can really bring out the best in a lot of these guys. And for Ottawa's sake, I think getting Eric Brandstrom is going to be amazing for you guys. I think he's going to slot into the NHL next year and be a very, very solid defenseman. And obviously with Thomas Chabot and Brandstrom as your two young defensemen really leading the rebuild there, and you still have some pretty solid prospects like Formanton, Drake Batherson, and obviously Brady Tkachuk and Colin White. So I think things in Ottawa really aren't as bad as they may look. So I really love this trade for both sides, especially after Mark Stone signed that big extension with Vegas. He's going to be a big part of their future. I honestly think he could potentially be a future captain of this team. So I think both teams kind of lucked out in this one, but Vegas, in my opinion, are just big winners from yesterday for really solidifying that forward group and getting the biggest guy on the market. And the last team I'll talk about in today's video is the Winnipeg Jets, a team that in my opinion got a lot deeper and really bolstered their roster like a lot of other Western Conference teams did. They did give up a lot of assets, but I think they are better right now than they were 2 days ago. So they acquired Kevin Hayes, Matt Hendricks, Nathan Beaulieu, Bogdan Kislevich, and Per Lindholm, and they traded away Brendan Lemieux, a 2019 first, a conditional pick in 2020, a 7th, a 6th, and a 7th, and Nicholas Patan. Patan's a guy who I think is going to benefit a lot from a fresh start. I hope he does well in Toronto. He was obviously in the trade 1-for-1 for Per Lindholm, and I think Per Lindholm is going to be a pretty nice addition to the bottom six of the Winnipeg Jets, a guy who can kill penalties, more of a shutdown guy with not much offensive upside, but just brings a lot more depth and experience to this team. Obviously not NHL experience, but he is like a veteran guy. He's been playing professional hockey for a long time. Bogdan Kislevich obviously was brought over from Florida from the KHL, and it just hasn't really worked out, so he's just a depth defenseman. Nathan Beaulieu is a guy who I think could honestly take a spot in the bottom pairing for this team. I was a big fan of him in Buffalo, and they didn't have to give up much to get him. I'm a fan of that acquisition too, just getting more depth defenseman. Matt Hendricks is a guy who's probably going to be scratched on most nights, but can bring that grit to your fourth line as well. And then the big fish, Kevin Hayes, who I think is going to be an amazing second line center, whether they want to play him with Kyle Connor and Nikolai Ehlers and keep Patrick Laine on the top line. I think there's a lot of things they can do with Kevin Hayes, but they had to make a move because, in my opinion, the Western Conference is just loading up, and it's going to be a bloodbath in the playoffs, and I think they really did make a lot of the right moves to keep themselves as a favorite. I think they're a lot better right now than they were 2 days ago. Like I said, I love the moves that they made. They did give up some pretty decent assets, but if you can bring back guys like Kevin Hayes, which is going to be pretty tough to do in my opinion, it would be all worth it. And hey, if you win a Stanley Cup or make it even really deep playoff run, I think a lot of these moves in themselves are going to be worth it. So I love the moves that the Jets made, and I think they had a really good trade deadline. So that is going to do it for this video. Obviously, there's a lot of other teams that had a pretty good day as well. I like a lot of the moves that the Boston Bruins made. I love the acquisition of Brandon Montour for the Buffalo Sabres as well. So I didn't cover every team, but in my opinion, these are just the 5 teams that I think made out the best. So with that being said, I hope you guys all enjoyed the video. Make sure to let me know down in the comment section who you think were the winners of the trade deadline yesterday. And with that being said, I hope you guys all enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure to drop a like on it and subscribe to the channel for daily NHL content. And I will see you guys all in the next video.